Greetings, Shalom Lechem. Today we were learning a little excerpt from Sefer HaKuzari by Rebbe Yehuda Halevi, and it's a short part in the second essay. And while reading it the first time in my life, I had a feeling of epiphany, I think it's called, like a so-called aha moment, where it suddenly made a lot of sense to me. And yeah. So like the previous Perek or verse, basically, the author on the two, like the Khazari and the Rebbe, they speak about certain, the way that I understood is that Jewish people used to look like very, very angelic, extremely beautiful and all, but after the dispersion, after the exile, after many, many terrible sins, there was a certain process of degeneration, and so on, that had an impact in many different ways on us. And then later on, he talks about something very interesting, and that being about the Hebrew language, about this Shemitic language, and about other languages as well. Like Hebrew used to be the origin, like the biblical, like ancient Hebrew, used to be the only language back in the day. Back in the day means when Hashem, like according to some sources, spoke to Adam and Chava. They spoke in a specific kind of Hebrew, but that's very deep, and yeah, I'm just better to just read the words from this book instead of babbling around. What is your opinion of Solomon's accomplishments? Did he not, with the assistance of divine intellectual and natural power, converse on all sciences? The inhabitants of the earth traveled to him in order to carry forth his learning even as far as India. Now the roots and principles of all sciences were handed down from us, first to the Chaldeans, then to the Persians and Medians, then to Greece, and finally to the Romans. On account of the length of this period and the many disturbing circumstances, it was forgotten that they had originated with the Hebrews, and so they were ascribed to the Greeks and Romans. To Hebrew, however, belongs the first place, both as regards the nature of the languages and as to fullness of meanings, says the Rebbe. So, in some ways, all languages in this world, when you go far back enough, descend from Hebrew, basically originate in Hebrew. And then Al-Khazari says or asks, is Hebrew superior to other languages? Do we not see distinctly that the latter are more finished and comprehensive? Says the Rebbe, it shared the fate of its bearers, degenerating and dwindling with them, with the Jewish people. So, with me, and all other Jews as well, considered historically and logically, its original form is the noblest. According to tradition, it is the language in which Hashem, God, spoke to Adam and Chava, and in which the latter conversed. It is provided by the derivation of Adam from Adama, Isha from Ish, Chaya from Hay, Cain from Chaniti, Sheth from Shaf, and Noah from Yena, Menu. This is supported by the evidence of the Torah. The whole is traced back to Eber, Noah, and Adam. It is the language of Eber, after whom it was called Hebrew, because after the confusion of tongues it was he who retained it. Abraham was an Aramean of Ur Kasdim, because the language of the Chaldeans was Aramaic. He employed Hebrew as a specially holy language and Aramaic for everyday use. For this reason Ishmael brought it to the Arabic-speaking nations, and the consequence was that Arabic and Hebrew are similar to each other in their vocabulary, grammatical rules and formations. The superiority of Hebrew is manifest from the logical point of view if we consider the people who employed it for discourses, particularly at the time when prophecy was rife among them, also for preaching, songs, and psalmody. It is conceivable that their rulers, such as for instance Moses, Moshe, Joshua, David, and Solomon, lacked the words to express what they wished, as it is the case with us today, because it is lost to us. Do you see how the Torah, when describing the Mishkan, ephod and breastplate and other objects, always finds the most suitable word for all these strange matters? How beautifully is this description composed! It is just the same with the names of people, species of birds and stones, the diction of David's psalms, the lamentations of Job, and his dispute with his friends, the addresses of Ishaiah. Al-Khazari, you will only succeed in placing it on a par with other languages, thus, but where is its preeminence? Other languages surpass it in songs metrically constructed and arranged for tunes. Says the Rebbe, it is obvious that a tune is independent of the meter or of the lesser or greater number of syllables. The verse Hodu la donai kito can therefore be sung to the same tune as Leoshe Niflaot Gedalot Lebado. This is the rule in sentences in which the tune must follow the grammatical construction. Rhymed poems, however, which are recited and in which a good meter is noticeable, are neglected for something higher and more useful. Al-Khazari asks, and what may that be? Says the Rebbe, the faculty of speech is to transmit the idea of the speaker into the soul of the hearer. Such intention, however, can only be carried out to perfection by means of oral communication. This is better than writing. The proverb is from the mouth of scholars, but not from the mouth of books. Verbal communication finds various aids, either in pausing or continuing to speak according to the requirements of the sentence, by raising or lowering the voice, in expressing astonishment, question, narrative, desire, fear, or submission by means of gestures, without which speech by itself would remain inadequate. Occasionally the speaker even has recourse to movements of eyes, eyebrows, or the whole head and hands, in order to express anger, pleasure, humility, or haughtiness, to the degree desired. In the remnant of our language which was created and instituted by Hashem, are implanted subtle elements calculated to promote understanding and to take the place of the above aids to speech. These are the accents with which the holy text is read. They denote pause and continuation. They separate question from answer, the beginning from the continuation of the speech, haste from hesitation, command from request, on which subject books might be written. He who intends to do this must omit poetry, because it can only be recited in one way, for it mostly connects when it should stop and stops where it should go on. One cannot avoid this except with great trouble. Okay, now an interesting aspect. Al-Khazari, Perik 73. It is but proper that mere beauty of sound should yield to lucidity of speech. Harmony pleases the ear, but exactness makes the meaning clear. I see, however, that you Jews long for prosody in imitation of other peoples, in order to force the Hebrew language into their meters. Says the Rabbi, this is because we remained and are forward. Instead of being satisfied with the superiority mentioned above, we corrupted the structure of our language, which is built on harmony, and created discord. How so? Al-Khazari asks. And then says the Rebbe, did you not see that 100 persons read the Torah as one person, stopping in one moment and continuing simultaneously? I have indeed observed this, and never saw the like of it either among Persians or Arabs. It is impossible in the recitation of a poem, and now I should like to know how the Hebrew language obtained that advantage, and how the meter interferes with it. The Rebbe says, the reason is that you can put together 2 vowels, consonants, but not 3 vowels, except in rare cases. This not only gives the speech a rest, but enables it to obtain that advantage, meaning consonants and fluency in reading. This makes learning by heart and the grasping of the meaning easy. The first thing which destroys metrical reading is the relation of those 2 consonants. Correct accentuation becomes impossible, so that ochla, food, is read like ochela, she is eating. Omro, his word, and Ameru, they have spoken, have metrically the same value as Omer, speaking, and Omer, word. Thus also the time difference between Shabti, which is past tense, and we Shabti, which is future lost. We might find a way out of this difficulty if we followed the ways of the Piyut, which does not interfere with the language and merely employs the rhyme. But in matters of poetry, the same befell us which befell our forefathers, concerning whom it is written, they mingled among the Gentiles and learned their works. The Khazari asks, I should like to ask whether you know the reason why Jews move to and fro when reading the Bible, like doing this movement. Says the Rebbe, it is said that it is done in order to arouse natural heat. My personal belief is that it stands in connection with the subject under discussion, as it often happened that many persons read at the same time. It was possible that 10 or more read from one volume. This is the reason why our books are so large. Each of them was obliged to bend down in his turn in order to read a passage and to turn back again. This resulted in a continual bending and sitting up. The book lying on the ground, this was one reason. Then it became a habit through constant seeing, observing and imitating, which is in man's nature. Other people read each out of his own book, either bringing it near to his eyes, or, if he pleased, bending down to it without inconveniencing his neighbor. There was therefore no necessity of bending and sitting up. We will now discuss the importance of these accents, the orthographic value of the 7 principal vowel signs, the grammatical accuracy resulting from them, as well as from the distinction between kames, pata, sere, and shegor. They influence the meaning of grammatical forms and insist in distinguishing between past and future tenses, meaning. Unfortunately, I cannot read Hebrew at the present moment. There is certain letters like the Shin letter, but here comes some Hebrew. But that's okay, I will read this later on. Yeah, just a short excerpt that I sometimes just, I don't know. I think I will let these words speak for themselves. I think they're better than what I can come up with right now. Like, it all makes sense somehow.